Gosh of the Superior Court, now sitting at Fall River within and for the Commonwealth. Draw near, give your attendance, and you shall be heard. God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The court is now in session. Be seated, please.
Yes, please.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Today is Wednesday, March 4th, 2015. The case on trial today is Commonwealth v. Aaron Hernandez, indictment BRCR 2013-0983. The Honorable E. Susan Garsh presiding.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Have any of you seen or heard or read or overheard anything at all about this case or Mr. Hernandez since I last inquired? There are no firm responses, and have any of you discussed the case or Mr. Hernandez in any way with anybody since I last inquired? There are no firm responses, and have any of you had any difficulty following any of my instructions not to talk about or in any fashion communicate about, look at, listen to, or do any research about this case or Mr. Hernandez or anything you think could be relevant in any way to this case? There are no firm responses. You may resume.
Mr. Mackey, do you mind returning to your stone girl, sir?
I do.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Do you recall that when we left off yesterday afternoon, I had just turned to the topic of some work you did at the Enterprise Rent-A-Car office in North Attleboro on June 20th, 2013.
I do believe we were starting, yes.
Okay. And you told us that when you got there, you were directed to some evidence that had already been retrieved, right?
That is correct.
And on the screen, evidence exhibit 135. Is that one of the items that you saw at Enterprise that evening?
It is.
Okay. And would you agree with me, sir, that that appears to be a showcasing attached to some blue bubble gum?
Objection, Your Honor. No foundation for this witness is an expert on bubblegum.
Is this what you saw that night?
That is, sir.
Okay. And did you look at it?
I took photos, yes. So I did look at it.
Did you smell it?
No.
Did you form any opinion based on your training experience and the life experience you told us about yesterday as to what that was attached to that shell casing, sir?
We're talking about the blue substance?
That's what we're talking about.
Okay. At the time, I really wasn't sure. I know a couple of items that look like that, so
I don't want you to speculate, sir. We're not here to speculate.
Okay.
Okay. Now, you decided, you told us yesterday, to separate shell casing from the blue substance it was attached to, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, did someone tell you to do that?
No.
Okay. That was your call?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, how long have you been in crime scene services?
13 years.
Okay. Have you ever heard of DNA analysis?
Yes.
Okay. And did it occur to you that evening, before you made the decision to separate these two items, that the DNA section of your crime lab might want to examine the two attached items together?
No.
Tell us how you went about separating them.
I put on a pair of gloves, and I basically pulled the two items apart. Trooper John Conroy from Ballistics was there. He had a coin envelope. I dropped the shell casing into the coin envelope, and the blue substance was then placed back in a bag and given back to North Attleboro PD.
So you just
to
used,
secure.
you used your hands to do that?
Gloves, gloved hands, yes, sir.
Your gloved hands?
Yes, sir.
Right. Now, you wrote a report about what you did at Enterprise that night, right?
Yes.
Is that a copy of your report, sir?
It is, sir.
Okay. And there is nothing in that report about what you did in separating the shell casing from the blue substance it was attached to, is there?
No, there's not.
In fact, there's nothing in your report about any blue substance attached to the shell casing at all, is there?
That's correct. That's what the photos were for.
I'm sorry, sir. There's nothing in your report, right?
That is correct.
Now, are you trained, sir, when you write a report to document anything that you consider to be important?
Yes.
And did you just not consider that important enough to put in your report, sir?
That I separated it?
Yes.
No.
Now, let's turn to the vehicles. You testified yesterday about some fingerprints that you found inside and outside of a Nissan Altima, right?
That is correct.
Okay. And you told us about some photographs that were taken of the Altima before it was processed, right?
That is correct.
Okay. And those photographs were yesterday admitted into evidence and shown to the jury, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, you also testified yesterday about fingerprints that were found inside and outside of a black Chevrolet Suburban, right?
That is correct.
Okay. And photographs of the Suburban were also taken prior to processing, right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. We didn't see any of those photographs during your direct examination yesterday, did we?
No, we did not.
You want to make the approach on this, Rick?
So let me show you some photographs.
Yes, sir.
You got a good look at the Suburban, right?
I saw it basically from the outside. I wasn't processing it, so
Well, those appear to be accurate photographs of the Suburban before it was processed.
Objection, Your Honor. If you Did you look inside? If you looked inside, if you can indicate whether those are fair and accurate, you may answer the question.
I did, Your Honor. I can't tell if it's before processing or after processing because we're not seeing the outside, so.
Okay. Well, whether those photographs were taken before or after processing, would you agree with me that they are fair and accurate photographs of what the Suburban looked like, the inside of the Suburban looked like, during the processing, before or during the processing?
Yes, sir.
I'd offer these, Your Honor.
Subject to my prior objection.
Objections overruled. They may be marked as the next exhibit.
Sir, I'm showing you 262A.
Yes, sir.
This is the back seat of the Suburban, right?
I believe so from the passenger side.
Okay. And do you see that red object on the floor there?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Let's zoom in on it a little bit more. All right. Can you tell what that is?
I believe it's a red lighter.
Okay. Like a cigarette lighter?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let me show you another photograph, a better one, 262B. Well, that's a close-up of that same cigarette lighter, right?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. Was that cigarette lighter that was found on the floor, back seat floor of the Suburban, was that
Objection, Your Honor.
processed with prints?
Excuse me, objection, Your Honor. That question contains hearsay.
Objection is sustained.
Well, this is the back seat of the Suburban, right?
Correct.
Okay. And would you agree with me that that's a lighter?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Was that lighter processed for fingerprints?
Yes.
Okay. (262C). Would you agree with me that that is a photograph of the front seat of the Suburban?
That is correct from the passenger side, yes.
Okay. 262D, would you agree with me that that is a closer-up photograph of the front seat of the Suburban?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you see this item here in the foreground?
I do.
Okay. Can you tell us, of your own personal knowledge, what that item is?
I believe it is like a bathroom accessories bag,
Okay, like a shaving kit?
shaving kit, yes.
Okay. Let me show you a closer-up version. Is that a closer-up version, the same item
It appears to be, yes, sir.
that was in the front seat of the Suburban?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Was that item processed for fingerprints?
I never saw it, no. And I never saw it outside of the vehicle, so no.
This item was never processed for fingerprints?
No.
Whose decision was that?
Whoever was processing the vehicle,
Who was that?
I believe it was Trooper Paul Bartlett, Trooper John Costa, and Trooper Kevin Heffernan. Sorry, Ken Heffernan.
Now, Going back to 262D.
Yes.
You see some items here, this part, this tray in the middle of the seat.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Show you a closer up of those, which is 262F. Is that a closer up version of those two items?
It is, sir.
Okay. Were those items processed for fingerprints?
Yes.
Okay. Now, and were fingerprints of any of the individuals that you were looking for found on either of those two items?
Yes.
Okay. And which item was it, and whose fingerprints were they?
The Magnum condom wrappers,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Odin Lloyd.
Okay. And you didn't tell us that on direct examination, did you?
I wasn't asked.
Did you tell us? You were not asked that on direct examination, right?
That is correct.
What about that other item? Did you, the other item was, I just took it off the screen. Do you remember what that item was?
Was it the blue item?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I believe that was a Polo cologne bottle.
Was that processed for prints?
Yes, it was.
Now, you told us yesterday, did you not, that the only of the people you were looking at, the comparisons you were making,
Yes, sir.
that the only person's prints found inside that Suburban other than Odin Lloyd's were belonged to Keelia Smith. Is that what you told us yesterday, sir?
Objection, Mr. President.
Oral.
Is that what you told us yesterday? Yes or no?
Yes, a print card. Well,
Yes or no?
I have to explain further.
Well, I think it's a very simple question, so let me ask it again. Did you tell us yesterday that the only prints that were found inside the Suburban that you could match to anybody that you were looking at belonged to Odin Lloyd or Keelia Smith? Yes or no?
Of the cards I was given, yes.
All right. Well, that wasn't true, was it?
Yes, it is.
Well, one of the sets of prints, sir, that you were given belonged to an individual named Darrell Hodge, right?
Incorrect.
Are you telling this jury you did not have a set of Darrell Hodge's fingerprints, sir? Yes or no?
No.
You're not telling them that, are you?
No, I am telling that when I was first looking at the car, I did not have print card for Mr. Darrell Hodge.
Well, at some point, you got a print card for Darrell Hodge, right?
That is correct.
And at some point, you compared prints inside the Suburban to the prints of Darrell Hodge, right?
That is correct.
And when you did that, you found some prints inside the Suburban that you believed to belong to Darrell Hodge, right?
That is correct.
And you didn't tell us that yesterday on direct examination, did you, sir? Yes or no?
No, there was a sidebar.
Were you privy to what counsel was discussing with Her Honor Judge Garsh at sidebar?
No, but when we were getting to the area of how I would have found cards,
The question is simply,
no, I was not privy to what was being said at the sidebar.
You were asked directly on direct examination yesterday whose prints were found inside that Suburban, right?
Using the cards, yes.
So is it your testimony now to this jury that you were thinking of Darrell Hodge, but you didn't mention him because you weren't asked the precise correct question to elicit that testimony? Is that what you're telling us?
I'm,
On the sidewalk, please.
I'm not going to belabor this point, Trooper. I just want to make clear to the jury. In fact, you did find Darrell Hodge, fingerprints that you believe to belong to Darrell Hodge inside that Suburban, right?
that is correct.
Now, let's turn to the Altima.
Yes, sir.
You testified yesterday, did you not, that there were two fingerprints which you believed belonged to Aaron Hernandez on the inside driver's door handle of the Altima, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, you have absolutely no idea when those prints were left, do you?
No.
And would you agree with me, sir, that if somebody rented a car and then returned that car at some point, driving it, that you wouldn't be surprised to find that person's fingerprints on the inside driver's door handle, would you?
No, I would not.
By the way, in addition to the fingerprints in the Altima
Yes, sir.
that you told us about on direct examination, there were several other prints found inside or outside the Altima belonging to other persons, right?
That is correct. I believe I testified to that.
Right. Now, sir, you told us yesterday at the beginning of cross-examination that there are human factors in fingerprint analysis, right?
There can be, yes.
Okay. And are you aware of the existence of an expert working group on human factors in latent print analysis that's been set up by the National Institute of Justice?
I am.
Okay. And do you know who retired Detective Lieutenant Kenneth Martin is?
I do.
Okay. Did he have any role in training you?
Excuse me, yes, he did.
Okay. And are you aware that he's a member of that working group?
I am.
Okay. Now, are you familiar with the report that that working group issued?
I have skimmed through it, yes.
Okay. And do you consider that report to be an authoritative piece of work in your field?
Yes.
Okay. Now, have you ever heard the term confirmation bias?
Yes, I have.
Would you agree with me, sir, that confirmation bias is the interpretation of evidence in ways that are partial to existing beliefs, expectations, or a hypothesis in hand?
Yes, I do believe that's what it means.
Okay. And that's how it's referred to in that report, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Would you agree with me that confirmation bias is a proclivity to search for or interpret additional information to confirm beliefs and to steer clear of information that may disagree with prior beliefs?
I do not believe if you use the ACE-B methodology that happens, no.
Well, sir, I'm asking you if that's what confirmation bias is,
Which,
according to the report that you just told us is authoritative.
that it could be, yes.
Okay. Would you agree that extraneous information can influence people acting in good faith and attempting to be fair interpreters of the evidence?
It's a possibility.
You know what extraneous information means?
Outside information, extra.
So if somebody has, in addition, if they're not just looking at fingerprints, but they have outside information about the case, that outside information can influence people acting in good faith, attempting to be fair interpreters of the evidence, right?
That's what they're saying, yes.
And would you agree, sir, that especially when confronted with ambiguous or incomplete information, people tend to see what they hope or expect to see?
I don't believe so.
You don't believe that's true? Okay. Well, are you aware of the recommendation 3:3 set forth in this authoritative report that, quote, procedures should be implemented to protect examiners from exposure to extraneous information in a case?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Is it fair to say the idea of that recommendation is that in the course of a criminal investigation that fingerprint examiners should just examine fingerprints?
I don't believe that's what it's saying.
Well, to protect examiners from exposure to extraneous information in a case. What do you think that means, sir?
Not to give them all the information in the case.
Because it might affect, even subconsciously affect, their testing results, right?
once again, I don't believe so, if the methodology is used correctly.
You don't believe that happens, right?
No, I haven't seen it happen.
So you
For
think
me.
you disagree with this recommendation?
No.
Would you agree, then, that procedures should be implemented to protect examiners from exposure to extraneous information in a case?
I don't know how that would be done, but I would have no problem with it.
Well, would you agree that it could be done if you're going to be the fingerprint examiners in this case,
Okay?
not to tell you other stuff about the investigation and not to have you out doing other things? Isn't that a way it could be done?
Well, unfortunately, we don't have enough people for it to be done that way, so
So, how many people does the state police have?
well, we're not all state police are fingerprint, people, so.
Well, would you agree with me, sir? Just one of the things you told us you did was you took a drive with Detective Ciccio and
Yes.
Trooper Dumont, right?
That is correct.
You think the state police could have found somebody other than the fingerprint examiner to take that drive?
We're crime scene people, so we do numerous things, so
Are you telling this jury that, in your view, it is impossible for the Massachusetts State Police to comply with this recommendation of the expert working group on human factors and latent print analysis, that procedures should be implemented to protect examiners from exposure to extraneous information in a case?
well, it's a recommendation, but yes, I am.
You're telling us
At
it's impossible.
At this point in time, yes.
And that didn't happen in this case, did it?
No.
That's all I have. Thank you, sir.
Sir, yesterday afternoon, Mr. Sultan asked you, or pointed out that you hadn't actually gone through and done the basis of any of the particular prints that you identified in this case. Do you remember that question?
Yes.
May I approach?
May.
Let me show you this set of photographs and ask you to take a look at that and identify what that is.
Yes, it's pictures of the rear passenger side inside window of the Nissan Altima. And, and close-ups of one of the latent, a mid-range of the two prints on the window and a close-up of one of them.
And is there also an exemplar or a known in there as well?
Yes, there is.
Who's known as that?
That would be the left ring finger of Mr. Ernest Wallace.
I'd like to have this marked as a set.
Vice, next slide.
Pleasure.
these three items? What are those three items?
The first is a photo of the, the rear passenger inside door pull with latents on it. The next is latent number 19-2.30. And the next is a copy of the inked right middle finger of Mr. Carlos Ortiz.
The latent that you described as the second image, is that one of the latents that was on the door pull?
It is.
Might have the set marked as well, Your Honor.
Okay.
And mark is the next exhibit.
May I work to publish this, Your Honor? And may the witness use the flat Elmo device there as well? Thank you. You know, this particular photograph, 263A, if you could just state what is shown in this particular photograph.
Yes, we're looking at the rear inside passenger door. Looking at the, up on the window, you see two white, I guess rectangular objects, which would be measuring tape marking the latents on the window.
In your direct examination, did you opine with regards to those particular latents as to who they belong to?
I did.
And with regards to those latents, what were the opinions for starting with the top and then the bottom?
Well, the top is actually latent 19-2.3, which I made the opinion was made by the left ring finger of Mr. Ernest Wallace. And the lower is 19-2.4, which I made the opinion was made by the left middle finger of Mr. Ernest Wallace.
Show you now 263D. Ask if you recognize what that particular photo is.
I do.
And is that a close-up of the two that we were just looking at from a further distance?
It's, well, mid-range, yes.
Okay. How far apart are the two latents on there?
Approximately an inch.
If you could just sort of point to them, and I'll point to them on the screen as well.
Okay. Oops. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
So you're using the Elmo device there?
Yes. Let's see.
Which one is that you're pointing at there?
This one right here would be 19-2.3,
And where is the lower one?
and the lower one is right here, and this is 19-2.4.
Showing you 268C. I asked if you could tell us what that is.
Yes, that is a close-up of 19-2.3.
And 263D. What is that?
That is a close-up of the left ring finger of Mr. Ernest Wallace.
Is that the particular finger that you opined was consistent with the latent that we just described?
Yes.
Sir, do you have time seen it? With regards to these two particular images here,
Yes, sir.
is that blown up enough for you to see the ridge detail at all?
Yes.
Can I help you at all with that by coming in closer, or is that fine?
I think that's fine.
Okay. Sir, if you could, just explain to the jury how you derived your basis for your opinion that these two particular, that the the latent on the right had sufficient consistencies to the known print on the left.
Okay, well, as I was explaining yesterday, one of the first things we look for, excuse me, when we're looking at a latent print is to see if we can determine what the pattern type is. The latent is on the right-hand side. There is a smudge going through the center, let's see if I can, right in this area. But if you look up here, you can actually see, and these icons right here are kind of in the way, but you can see that there's actually the recurve coming around, and this would be the core in the middle. So you can tell, first off, that we're looking at a left loop pattern. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to start to look at any fingerprint cards that I have. I'm going to be looking for a left loop pattern. Also, sorry, I'm new using this thing. If you look down here, you actually see the crease in between the finger joints. So as I said, the top where the finger pattern is actually the distal phalange. Then you have the medial phalange in between. As you can see, looking here, you see here's the crease that splits the distal phalange and the medial phalange. And you can see it over here on the latent also. So here's the split between the two phalanges. So now I know I'm looking in the right area to start trying to make any comparisons. So now, you know, I've found the crease there. I've found the pattern type. So now I'm going to start looking for level 2, which is going to be some of the characteristics I explained yesterday, to find them, to see if they are actually there and whether or not they line up sequentially, so that there's nothing in between that shouldn't be there, or there's anything that's unexplainable, unlike the smudge that I set up here, which is explainable. That's why you're not seeing the ridges in here. So, oh. Come on. Okay, I guess I'm going to stick with the green. So, I'm going to start looking for the characteristics, as I said. Okay, that's right. Right here, we have a bifurcation. You can see, actually, I should explain first, on the left-hand side is the inked print. So as I said, that's made with printer's ink on a contrasting background. So the ridges on that side are going to be black. On the other side, we're looking at the super glue, which basically turns the ridges white. So there's no confusion. One side's black, the other side's white. So as I said, right there we have a bifurcation, and it is just a couple of ridges above the crease. So if we go over here, sorry, a couple of ridges above the crease. We have, a bifurcation right there. If we then count up one ridge and continue over to the left, you can see we have another bifurcation. If you go back over to the latent print, you see the one bifurcation there. As I said, go up one ridge, come over, Here you have a bifurcation. Now you can actually go to the top ridge of the bifurcation, jump up, and you actually see here's another bifurcation right here. If you continue, if you go back to the inked print, you can see you have a bifurcation. If you stick to the, excuse me, the lower ridge of that bifurcation, you'll come to, there's another bifurcation here. You can actually slide up to another bifurcation on the top ridge. So, as I said, we're going from the lower, we follow it up, we have this bifurcation, you go to the top ridge, you come up, brings you to another bifurcation. And if you look just above that bifurcation, the next group of ridges, which actually will connect back down to the other side of that bifurcation, you have one right here, which actually comes up to another bifurcation. So as I said, you can come over here, sorry, come around here, there's a bifurcation, brings you up to another bifurcation. Now if you look just above the bifurcation here, you can actually see you got kind of like a white line going through. That's a crease, could possibly be like a paper cut, but you can see it going across from basically the center of the core. If you come over here, you can actually see, where is it, like right here, there's, starts kind of like right there. There's a little delineation that goes across that shows the crease. Getting back over here, if we go from this, the one bifurcation, if you jump up one, 1, 2, 3, you're basically coming to another bifurcation. Oops, sorry. It comes down, basically to an ending ridge, and here you have an ending ridge that splits into a bifurcation. And then we can keep on going from this bifurcation, 1, 2, 3. There's a bifurcation that comes down to another bifurcation over here. So I said 1, 2, was it 1, 2, 3? Oh, which, okay, 1, 2, 3. Right there, actually comes down to 1. And then there are a few more, and as I was saying, you get little scars in that. You got a scar there, you got a scar there. You can see how the ridges are kind of bouncing around. And there's still some more that I can mark, but I think that gives you an idea.
And sir, with regards to your analysis there,
Yes.
if you find a particular detail within either side of the fingerprints that doesn't carry over and is not explained by some smearing or other physical object, how does that affect your opinion?
If I find, say, like another ridge in between, is that
Yeah, so if you're counting the ridges and all of a sudden you see something that's not consistent on the latent,
yes.
how does that affect your opinion?
If it's not explainable, like from movement, at that time I determined that it is not from the same finger. Things can't, and other than like cuts or scars, those can appear at any time. From say if somebody's printed earlier in life and then cuts, or even if we're looking at a card that has a cut from earlier and then later on it's healed and it doesn't appear, that's easily explainable. If there is a ridge, extra ridge running in between characteristics, or a characteristic that is not on one, that's on the other, if you're looking in the same area, then we determine that it is not made by the same person.
Thank you. Showing you 264A. What are we looking at here?
264A, we are looking at the rear passenger side inside door handle.
And with regards to the rear passenger side door handle, Did you identify any latents on this door handle that were consistent with any of the cards that you had used to analyze?
Yes, I did.
And where are those, sir?
There's actually 4 latents on here. 30, 31, 32, 33.
Starting from the inside, sir, do you recall whose latent that was, according to your opinion?
Yes, Mr. Odin Lloyd's.
All right. Direct your attention to the end, the last one on the far side. Do you recall what your opinion was with regards to that particular latent?
Yes, I made the opinion that the latent there was made by the right middle finger of Mr. Carlos Ortiz.
Specifically to that last one you described, with attention to that, 264B, you recognize what that is?
Yes, that would be latent 19-2.30.
264C?
That is the right inked fingerprint of the right middle inked finger of Carlos Ortiz.
Now, specifically, with regards to formulating your opinion, does the material of the handle change the way that you have an opinion?
No.
Could you move the one on the left over a little so that the one on the right can move over and doesn't hit the...
Sir, now with regards to these particular images, are they insufficient sort of zoomed in this to be able to tell what they are?
I believe so.
Okay. And sir, without sort of going through the whole analysis, if you could, just sort of describe for the jury what we're looking at here in comparison between the two of them.
Okay, on the left-hand side, we're looking at the inked right middle fingerprint of Mr. Carlos Ortiz. On the right, we are looking at the latent 19-2.30, which is on the towards the tip of the interior door handle of the rear passenger side door.
And sir, do I have those oriented in a way that they're going in the same direction, if you will?
Actually, the latent print could be turned a little counterclockwise. No, sorry, the latent, yeah, or actually, if you turn that and if you take the inked print and you turn it, I guess clockwise, yeah. Okay, that's pretty much, that's close enough.
What's the Class 1 characteristics for these particular prints?
Class 1 characteristics, once again, you can see that there is a little bit of smudging going on here, and actually the latent kind of cuts off right here, but you can actually see that there is a recurve here. It's a short recurve, and if you look at the inked print, you see the same thing. It's a short recurve, so it's a short count right loop. And what I mean by short count is you're looking at the core, which in this case is the core right here, and then you're counting over to the, well, we'll call it a triangle, you know, so the divergence right there. And if, you know, in this case, there's only about 4 or 5 ridges, so that would be a short count as opposed to the last one we looked at where there was probably 10, 12. So that's going to be the first thing that we're looking at. The next And at your request, I'll try to make this
If you could
a little
just
quicker.
more quickly than we did the
Well,
last one,
well-
sort of go through the consistencies.
Okay, if you look right down here, it's actually the delta. We look in the middle of the delta. You have like a triangle right here. If you look over, we're looking at the delta. There's the triangle right there. If you go over to the right, you'll see here's an ending ridge, here's an ending ridge. It's over here, it's over there. And actually, if you go to the ridge just to the right of the short ridge, you follow it up, it comes to a bifurcation and comes down, connects to the triangle. Right here, if you come up here, here you see, there it is, kind of thin, comes down. Then to the left, you've got a ending ridge upward, drop down, below. There's an ending ridge coming across underneath. That would be this ridge right here. Then I don't know how well you can see it because of the light, but right underneath this ridge, there's actually a small part of a ridge right there. There's a break. The ridge goes that way, and the ridge goes that way. So if you look over here, you see there's a small part of a ridge, there's a break, that ridge there, ridge there. And then even from this ending, count up to 1, 2, you've got your ending ridge right there. Oh, I didn't mark that on there before. 1, 2, and you got an ending ridge there. And there's a shorter version of it. There are more that you can probably even see yourself.
Sir, when you're in the lab and you're actually doing the full analysis, do you look at the entire amount of ridge detail that you can find on a particular latent?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so do you ever not use any part of the ridge detail that you can actually see?
No.
Photograph of the With regards to this particular image, sir, did you say that you took this actual picture?
Yes.
Okay. And did you do the analysis for the fingerprints for this particular item?
I did.
Where was the item when you were looking at it for the analysis on the fingerprints?
It was at the crime lab.
Did you actually have it in your gloved hands?
Yes.
How do you use any magnification or any kind of a device to look closely at it?
Yes, we actually have a magnifying glass with lights on the side of it, you know, so we can look through and the lights will light it up.
If I could, the actual firearm. Exhibit 184. Reference to the photograph, but more particularly taking a look at the actual firearm itself.
Yes.
Directing your attention to the handle of the firearm.
Yes.
What is that? What's it made of?
Plastic.
How do you know?
I've been around plastic numerous times throughout my life.
Okay. With regards to the what you've described as dirt,
Oh, sorry. Yes.
did you actually have a better view of it when you were analyzing it up close in the lab?
Yes.
Did you actually feel the item that was on the outside of the firearm?
Yes.
What was it?
Dirt.
Sultan asked you about certification. when you are, was it semi-annually you said, reviewed?
Semi-annual training,
Okay, semi-annual training.
yes.
Do you also have to take any tests?
Yes.
Who grades those tests?
Those tests are actually, I believe, sent out to the company that sends us the tests.
And what does the test consist of?
The test consists of, it can always change, but on an average, they're sending you 12 latents. They're photos of latents, and usually around 6 or 7 sets of major case prints.
What do you get back from that? Like, in other words, how do you know whether you've passed or failed?
It gets sent back to quality assurance, and quality assurance will send me an email with a little sheet on it that tells me that if I passed or I failed.
So that particular little sheet just doesn't have the curly cues around the edges to say it's a certificate? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
Now, with regards to this particular case, Mr. Sultan asked you whether or not you'd ever spoken to him about this particular case.
Correct.
Okay. Did he ever call you with regards to this case?
He did not.
Did any of the other 2 lawyers ever call you with regards to this particular case?
They did not.
Did you supply all of the materials that you used in your analysis to the defense in this case?
I believe so. Everything was sent to your office, and I believe you sent everything over to them. So
Did that
yes.
include all of your notes?
Yes.
And just so we're clear, with regards to the fingerprints that you've identified as having an opinion that they were consistent with Mr. Hernandez, with regards to those particular fingerprints, we saw some colored lining on those. Are those your notes?
Those are part of the those are the markings, as I just showed you here, but then I also write notes on the side.
Now, indeed, didn't someone on the defense team actually contact you with regards to this particular case?
Yes.
Who was that?
Mr. Andrew Rittenauer?
Did you know him prior to this case?
No.
And did you have actually 4 conversations with this gentleman?
Approximately.
And could you tell from those conversations, with reference to what he was saying, that he'd actually reviewed materials that you provided?
That he was reviewing them, that's correct.
When was that?
I believe it was the middle of last year, somewhere around then.
You discussed the ACE-V method.
Yes.
What's the V in the ACE-V method?
The V is for verification.
And what does that actually entail as a procedure?
In the verification process, what we do is I'm making 2 clean copies of the same items that I was using. So, as I said before, we blow up the fingerprints about 5-time enlargement. So I have 2 clean copies of the latent print, 2 clean copies of the inked impression. Those are then sent to another trooper and a supervisor, sometimes 2 supervisors, depending on who's around. And then they will look at them, and the first thing they're doing is trying to find any discrepancies, extra ridges, characteristics that are not there, and they will continue through the same way I just did, looking at those, and if they cannot, they will try to either determine that it's not an identification, that it is, or that they can't tell.
And sir, did all of the fingerprints that you described here in court go through the verification procedure?
Yes.
Were any of the fingerprints that went through that procedure that you found, you opined, were left by any of the individuals you compared, were any of those particular fingerprints sort of unverified or questioned by any of the people who looked at them?
No.
Specifically with regards to Mr. Hodge and the Suburban.
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan asked you whether or not it was in the original set of cards that had been compared. Was it?
Correct.
Well,
No, he
Mr.
was.
Hodge.
No, he wasn't in
Okay,
the
so
original
how
set.
did you come to find out about Mr. Hodge?
As I said, when we're looking through the latent prints, we're going to compare them to known print cards that we do have. if we determine that they are sufficient, quality and quantity, to make a comparison. Once we go through the print cards, if we determine it's not made by any of those individuals, then we can enter it into both the APHIS and IAPHIS system. As I said before, the APHIS system is the statewide fingerprint system for Massachusetts in this case, or IAPHIS, which is the federal. In this case, the latent was actually sent to both, and IAPHIS returned a list of names, and Mr. Darrell Hodges was on there.
Were any of the other individuals on that list any person that you've had an opinion whether or not those prints were in the car?
That they weren't.
Okay. Now, sir, in your experience, with regards to the bias that was raised by Mr. Sultan, have your fingerprint analyses ever actually exonerated the person that you were looking at?
Yes.
I have no further questions.
Very briefly, Trooper, when was
sir.
the last time you spoke to any of the prosecutors about your testimony?
Today.
And when was the last time before today that you spoke to any of the prosecutors about your testimony?
Probably yesterday.
And when you spoke to them today, that was while you were on the witness stand. That is, you had started your testimony yesterday and you were continuing it today, right?
Yes.
So, in the middle of your testimony, you spoke to the prosecutors about your testimony, right?
Yes.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Kemp.
Excuse me, Your Honor. The next witness we call Sherry Hernandez, please.
And you solemnly swear that the testimony about to give you is support and jury will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
Ma'am, Your Honor. Thank you. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
State your full name.
Sherry Menendez,
Could you spell your first name
Sherri
and your last name, please?
Menendez.
Do you work?
I do.
Where do you work?
I work at the Massachusetts State Police Crime Laboratory.
And where is that located?
I work in the lab in Lakeville, Mass.
And how long have you worked at the Lakeville lab?
Since 2006 when it opened.
Prior to that, where did you work?
I worked when I first began at a facility in Sudbury. I then worked at a facility in North Sudbury and Maynard.
And how many years have you been working total with the state police?
Since October of 2000, approximately 15 years.
And during the course of that time, can you just briefly describe how you've been assigned?
I've been assigned to the criminalistics unit my entire time at the lab.
And what is your background prior to beginning work for the criminalistics or the state police?
I have a degree in biology from the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth, and I have a degree in criminal justice from Westfield State College.
Now, with regard to your assignment in the criminalistics unit of the state police, just describe what are your general duties?
My current duty is a supervisor in the Lakeville lab, so I oversee chemists that work in that lab. We examine evidence for the presence of biological fluids, such as blood, semen, and saliva, and trace materials, including hairs, fibers, and gunshot residues. This evidence is submitted to the lab through local and state police agencies, as well as crime scene responders. These cases include fatal and non-fatal beatings, stabbings, shootings, sexual assaults, and motor vehicle accidents. I also respond to crime scenes where I collect and preserve physical evidence for further testing. I prepare reports and testify when required.
Say you're a supervisor?
I am.
How many people do you supervise?
3 chemists.
And do they all work out of your unit in Lakeville?
They do.
Now, just with regard to what you've described as your duties, have you been to crime scenes before?
I have.
On how many crime scenes have you been to?
Approximately 400 to 450.
And during the course of those, your involvement in those crime scenes, have you analyzed different materials and evidence from the crime scenes?
I have.
How many times have you done that?
900 cases.
Now, I'd like to direct your attention to a matter that began June 17, 2013, upon the discovery of the body of Odin Lloyd in North Attleboro. Are you aware of that case?
I am.
At some point, did you become involved in the investigation of that matter?
I did.
And just tell us briefly, what was your first involvement in the case?
A request came into our office in the Lakeville lab to do a rush analysis on some pieces of evidence.
Okay. And just describe, if you would, the pieces of analysis that were sent to you.
Initially, it was some shell casings and a firearm.
Okay. And when you say shell casings, do you recall how many shell casings?
There were 5 originally requested.
And the firearm that you referenced, just describe that, if you would.
A firearm, including a magazine and 2 rounds of ammunition, was requested to be examined.
Okay. And just, if you would, tell this jury, what are your duties, or how do you go about analyzing evidence when either shell casings or firearm are sent to you?
When a request comes in, dependent on the type of evidence, we follow certain protocols in examining that evidence. So depending on what it is and what we're looking for, we might utilize 1 protocol, 2 or 3.
Okay. And taking on first the shell casings, so how is it that you would come into possession of 5 shell casings in this case?
So in regards to shell casings, they go through a certain route in our laboratory, and that's in regards to our protocols. Different units get custody of them and test them at different times, depending on what we're looking for. In this case, it went the full route, which it first started in crime scene services, where they were printed. It then came to the criminalistics unit, where I examined it for the collection of DNA, and then it went to our ballistics unit for testing.
Is that a standard procedure moving through the units as you've described?
It is.
Now, do you recall on what date, let me ask you, even before you would see an item, is there some logging method that's used by your lab?
There is.
Can you just describe that method?
So we have a system put in place. It's a LIM system, that stands for Laboratory Information Management System. So whenever a piece of evidence is submitted into the laboratory, it is submitted under the case number, and then it is given an individual number when it's brought in. It is then tracked by that number wherever it goes throughout the lab.
Okay. And was there a number assigned to these items, the shell casings? Well, first, was there a case number assigned to the investigation?
There was.
Okay. And what case number was that?
13-11925.
Okay. Now, that case number applied to the investigation of evidence relating to this homicide?
Correct, in the laboratory.
Okay. And then are there further subcategories of evidence in terms of how it's accounted for and logged in as different items are then presented to you or others at the Lakeville laboratory?
When items are presented to the lab, they're given a submission number. So if 5 items are brought in at one time, they will all have the same submission number, and then they will have an individual number.
And do you know what the first items that were submitted in this case under case number 13-11925?
They would be the discharge cartridge casings.
Okay, and you've indicated there were 5 of those?
There were.
Okay, and at some point, do you recall the date that you actually first observed these items?
I believe it was June 19th.
And based on your prior testimony a few minutes ago, had that already proceeded through another unit before it came into your possession?
They had.
And what unit was that?
The crime scene services unit.
Okay. Now, so when you recovered these items or first saw these items, just describe what you did.
So they come to us in a sealed package. I first photographed the exterior package. I then opened each envelope and photographed the item.
Okay. And how many envelopes were there?
There were 4 envelopes.
Did one envelope have more than one item?
Yes.
What do you do now once you've opened up the envelopes of these 4 packages?
So I take photos of them. I observe any coloring on the items. I then perform my testing.
Okay. Now, with regard to these items, were they numbered at the time that they came into your possession?
They were.
Okay, and what numbers were they?
The 4 different envelopes were given items 1-1 through 1-4.
So, I could approach. Thank you. Ma'am, I'm just going to show you what's previously been marked 184. And do you recognize this item?
I do.
And what do you recognize this to be?
That's the firearm that I examined.
And in terms of its condition, its present condition, does it appear different than when you first saw it?
It does.
And how is it different?
It's been cleaned.
Okay. And with regards to the dirt and white debris that you observed on it, is that no longer on it?
It's no longer visible.
I'm just also going to show you what's been marked 185. Do you recognize this item?
I do.
And what do you recognize this to be?
The magazine that I examined.
Okay. And at the time of your examination, were there certain items inside the magazine?
There were.
And how many?
2.
And what were they?
Live rounds.
I'm just showing you, is this, do you recognize this item?
I do.
And what do you recognize that to be?
That is one of the live rounds I examined.
Now, sometime after your examination, do you know where these items were sent?
After my exam, they proceeded to go to the ballistics unit.
And do you know, are you familiar with the term test firearm?
I am.
And just what is a test firearm?
They make sure the firearm is in working condition, so they test fire it.
Now, with regard to item 184, did you do anything further other than your initial observation and examination of it?
I collected samples for the possible recovery of DNA.
Okay, and if you could just describe, how did you do that with regard to the firearm?
So similar to the casings, I took a clean swab, applied distilled water to it, and then rubbed it on the areas that are most commonly touched when holding a firearm to collect DNA.
And after you've done that with the firearm, what do you do with that swab?
I then let it dry. I put it in a small tube, marked it, and sent it to DNA for testing.
Now, do you use the same swab or a different swab well, let me ask you this first. Did you attempt to do the same thing with regards to the magazine or clip and ammunition that was found inside?
I did.
Okay. And how many swabs did you use?
1 swab for the firearm and 1 swab for the magazine and live rounds.
So as a result of your examination of the firearm, the magazine, and the ammunition, how many swabs did you have?
There were 2 total.
And where did those go?
Those went to our DNA unit.
Excuse me. Now, at some point, ma'am, did you have an occasion to examine a towel?
I did.
And do you recall what date that was on?
I believe it was June 21st.
And if you just describe the towel.
It was a white towel. That was approximately 18 inches by 34 inches and a tag that was labeled made in China.
Okay.
Excuse me, made in Indiana. In India,
Okay. And was there an item number signed to that?
there was.
And what item number was it, please?
2-1.
And just describe the general appearance of that item.
So it was generally dirty throughout. There was gray staining and yellow staining present on the towel.
And with regard to, you've described some of the ways you go about examining evidence. Do you sometimes use methods involving alternative light sources?
We do.
And did you do that in this case?
I did.
And just describe, what did you do? How did you use an alternative light source?
So noting the yellow stains, I wanted to use an alternate light source. The alternate light source helps detect stains that may not be visible to the naked eye. So I utilized this and noted any stains that were visible.
Okay. And as a result of that, did you do any additional screening tests on any of these stains?
I did.
And what types of screening tests?
I did a screening test for the presence of seminal fluid residue.
Okay, and what was the result of that?
They were negative.
Now, after doing that test, did you make any other observations of any materials on the towel?
I collected any trace that was present on the towel.
And just trace, when you say that word, what does that mean?
It's hairs and fibers.
And just describe what, if anything, you found trace materials on the towel.
So I found granular debris, vegetative debris, a black apparent string, and 2 hairs.
Okay. And did you make a further observation of any of the hairs?
I did.
And just describe what you found.
So I microscopically examined the 2 hairs. One was found to have a root and follicular tissue, and the other was just a fragment of hair.
Okay. And just in terms of your observation, were you able to make determinations as to color?
I was.
And just describe what color you observed.
The fragment was dark brown, and the hair with the root was light to medium brown.
Okay, and approximately how long was the dark brown hair?
1/4 of an inch.
Okay, and what about the other hair?
3/8 of an inch.
Okay. And as a result of making these observations of the towel, at some point did you then make a similar effort to collect potential DNA?
I did.
And just describe, how did you do that?
So I took swabs. I applied the distilled water to the swabs, and then I rubbed the swabs throughout the towel on both sides.
Okay. And what did you do with the swabs?
I allowed them to dry, packaged them in a tube, and sent them to DNA for testing.
Okay. Now, with regard to the towel, did you do, are you familiar with what's referred to as gunshot powder residue testing?
I am.
And just if you would describe for the jury, what is that?
So in this particular item, I was looking for residues that come out of the gun and may be deposited on the towel. They are small items that are usually naked to the eye.
Okay. And so, being naked to the eye, this testing, is it an effort to collect the potential, if any, actually exists?
Yes.
Okay. Describe, how do you go about doing this testing?
So prior to doing my swabbing, I took a small tube that has a little sticker on the inside, and that sticky portion is applied to the towel to help remove any of the gunshot residues that may be there.
And what do you do, just in terms of the this testing, is there something referred to as a stub?
It is.
Okay. And what, do you use the stub in an effort to make this collection?
So the tube with the sticky sticker inside is called the stub, and we utilize that to collect any gunshot residues.
And after you did this with regard to this towel, item 2-1, what did you do with the stub?
I then packaged it up and sent it to our bomb and arson unit for further testing.
Okay. Are you familiar with an individual by the name of John Biello?
I am.
Does he work in that unit?
He does.
Now, at some point, did you also have an occasion to examine an additional .45 shell casing?
I did.
And just tell us, when did you examine that?
I believe it was June 21st.
Okay. And do you know where, if you know, where that item had been recovered from?
I believe it was recovered from a car rental place in a dumpster.
Okay. Now, you've responded to numerous scenes to recover potential evidence, is that right?
Correct.
Have you ever had to recover items from a dumpster?
Yes.
And with regard to this item, can you just describe its condition when you first saw it?
When I first saw it, it had a little bit of green staining on it.
Okay. And just tell us, what, if anything, did you do in the course of observing or examining it?
I examined it similar to the other discharge cartridge casings, where I photographed it and then took a sample for DNA.
I'm just going to show you what's been marked Exhibit 125. Just have you look at that item, please. Do you recognize the item?
I do.
How do you recognize it?
It has my markings from when I examined it. It's the envelope that the casing came in.
So you indicated that similarly to the other 5 shell casings, you did a DNA swab.
I did.
And what did you do with that swab?
I prepared it for DNA and sent it to DNA.
The DNA unit is where?
It's up in our Maynard laboratory.
Now, at some point, did you also have an occasion to examine some spent projectiles?
I did.
And just tell us about that. When did you do that?
I believe it was on the 21st. I received some spent projectiles from the ballistics unit.
And do you know where those items had been recovered?
I believe 344 John L. Deitch Boulevard.
Okay. And just tell us, at some point you made observations and examined them?
I did.
And just describe what you saw.
So they were separate, packaged separately. They had some white and black staining as well as some fibers present on one of the projectiles.
And what did you do with those items?
I photoed them. I removed the fibers that were there, and then I sent the fibers to our trace unit.
Okay. And the trace unit, is that located at the Lakeville lab?
It is not.
Do you know where it's located?
It's located in our Sudbury laboratory.
Okay. Are you familiar with a woman by the name of Christina Hanley?
I am,
And is she, what unit is she in?
in our trace unit.
Yeah, Coach Ryan. Emma, I'm just going to show you first 3 photographs. Ask you to take a look at those, please. Do you recognize those?
I do.
And what do you recognize those to be?
These were photos that were generated during my exam of the projectiles.
Okay. And while I'm here, just going to show you 2 items that have been previously marked, 77 and 78. Ask you to take a look at those items inside. Do you recognize those?
I do.
And what do you recognize those to be?
They are the 2 projectiles that I examined.
In terms of 77 and 78, are they any different than the items depicted in these 3 photographs?
They are cleaned in the envelope now.
Okay. Same projectile, no longer with the item you described.
Correct.
Your Honor, I would offer these the photographs.
Okay.
Next exhibit.
If I may please speak.
Thank you. If I could publish these, Your Honor.
May.
Ma'am, I'm placing 265A on the overhead. Can you see that all right?
I can.
Now, what's depicted in this photograph?
This is my bench shop, and these are photographs. It's a photograph of when I was examining 29-1 and 29-2, the two projectiles.
Is this your handwriting down here?
It is.
Placing now 265B on the overhead. What do you recognize this to be?
This is a close-up of one of the projectiles.
When you say a close-up, you had indicated there was certain material that you, when you first observed it.
Yes,
Is that shown here?
it is.
Can you just describe the material if you would?
So there are white and blue fiber-like material. Those are the fibers. There's dirt and white debris on the projectile as well.
And what did you do with these items?
I removed the white and blue fibers and sent them to trace
And why did you remove them?
to be examined in our trace unit.
And what about with regard to the fibers went to trace, what about with this item here, the projectile?
I then repackaged it and sent it to our ballistics unit.
Is that a standard protocol to separate items and send them to their respective units?
It is.
And I'm placing 265C on the overhead. Do you recognize this?
I do.
And what do you recognize this to be?
That is the second projectile that I examined.
Okay. And just describe, was this in the same condition as when, does this depict the condition it was in when you first examined it?
It does.
And that those items that are shown here, just describe what those are.
It's the projectile with the white and black debris.
And did you do anything with regard to this debris?
I did not.
And what about the projectile?
I repackaged it and sent it back to our ballistics unit.
If I could have one moment, Your Honor, please. Your Honor, if I could, I'd like to just put Exhibit 166 on the overhead. Sorry, Your Honor, I misspoke. It was 228, please.
I'm sorry, what exhibit number?
228.
Can I just know what that is before we do it? Will you approach, Your Honor?
think that's agreed.
That's great, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Is that going to be marked now as an exhibit?
That can be marked, Your Honor. Yes.
Will be marked as the next exhibit?
Thank you.
Objection?
Is it 266?
May I use it? Thank you. Ma'am, I'm just going to show you a photograph. It's now been marked 266. You've seen this photograph before, is that true? Sorry.
Witness's screen is off.
I have.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, could Mr. Reset see if he could use it?
Oh, why don't we, I think she can see the
Okay.
picture.
Oh, you can see that? Okay. I'm just going to have you focus on the sweatshirt here, this white sweatshirt.
Screen's now working.
Oh, okay, thank you. At some point in time, you sent a sweatshirt to examine.
I was.
And just describe the sweatshirt that you were sent.
It was a hooded, long-sleeve white sweatshirt.
And just in terms of any markings on the chest area, did you note any?
There were none.
And what about, do you know when you say it was hooded, did it have any string that was associated with the hood?
It did not.
Just directing your attention to the item in 266, do you see a logo or something on the chest of that?
Objection, Your Honor.
Objection's the same.
If I could approach on it.
May.
And I'm just going to show you this item, these two photographs. Ask you if you would take a look at them, please. Do you recognize what's depicted?
I do.
And what is that?
Those are photos of a white sweatshirt that I examined in the laboratory.
Okay. And is it similar to what you've just described as terms of the condition of it or the absence of any logo on this?
Correct.
And how about any string for the hooded?
No string present.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd offer this as the next exhibit, please.
No objection.
Mark as next exhibit.
$267A and B.
I can publish this.
May.
And I'm placing 267A. Can you see that?
I can.
Excuse me. Is that the sweatshirt that you examined in connection with this case?
It is.
Is that the front or the back?
That is the front side exterior of the sweatshirt.
Just going to show you now what was marked 267B. Does that also show a different view of the sweatshirt?
It does.
And what view is that?
The back side exterior of the sweatshirt.
Now, in the course of your examination of this, did you conduct any testing on that item?
I did.
And just tell us about that.
So I photoed it, I observed any trace materials and collected them, and I collected a GSR stub from the sweatshirt.
Okay. Now, when you described trace items, what trace, if any, did you note on this white sweatshirt?
So I noted red, white, and dark colored fibers. I noted several hair fragments and an animal hair.
Okay. With regard to the hair fragments, just tell us what you observed.
3 medium brown hair fragments, approximately 1/4 of an inch. I observed 1 light to medium brown hair fragment, approximately 1/4 of an inch, and 1 colorless to dark brown animal hair, approximately 1.5 inches.
Okay. And with regard to the GSR, did you conduct GSR testing on this item?
I did.
And just describe how did you do it?
Similar to the towel, I took a GSR stub. I removed the sticky portion from the tube. I applied that to the cuff and sleeve areas of the left and right arm. I then sealed it up and sent it to our bomb and arson unit.
And then at some point, did you receive certain items from the autopsy of, from the medical examiner's office regarding the autopsy of Odin Lloyd?
I did.
And what items were those?
I received fingernails and a blood tube and some hair standards.
And just with regard to the blood tube, just how did that item come to you?
It comes through our evidence unit, and I take custody of it to examine.
And just describe, does that come in some form of test tube?
It does.
And is there a certain color of top to that test tube?
It was a purple top test tube.
And just what, if anything, did you do with that item?
I prepared a sample to be used as a DNA standard.
Okay, and just tell us, what is a DNA standard?
In regards to the blood, we take a portion of that blood and we spot it on a card, and that card is then sent to DNA, and a DNA profile is generated to be used for comparison.
When you say you spot it, what actually do you do?
So I took the tube, I took a pipette, I removed some of the blood from the tube, I then applied it to a small card, I then allowed the card to dry, I then packaged the card and sent it to our DNA unit.
Excuse me. And you also indicated there was some additional items that had also been recovered from the autopsy.
Correct.
What were those items?
The items I examined were the fingernail clippings.
Okay. And when you say fingernail clippings, from what fingers, if you know?
I received just a collection of fingernail clippings. One package contained the left fingernail clippings, the other package contained the right fingernail clippings.
Just describe your observations of those fingernail clippings.
They were red-brown stained, and there were approximately 5 in each container.
What did you do with regard to an examination of those items?
Before we get into that, we're going to take a morning recess. Line is suspended. Discuss the case among yourselves.
All rise. The jury, please.